2021, working as a grief therapist, what this has meant for me is 477 sessions that have supported 53 distinct individuals and families. We have touched on the death of grandparents, of parents, of siblings, partners, children, adult children, babies, stillbirths, miscarriages. The losses were sudden, they were anticipated, they were unexpected, they were planned with medical assistance. They were lost from genetics, illness, violence, suicide, accidents, and some remain unknown and unexplained. And there was also the large but unrecognized opiate crisis. Stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, trauma, COVID fatigue, sorrow, anger, suicidal thoughts, all showed up as expressions of grief in 2021. Watch through this video to learn what runs common throughout grief, regardless of the source or the expression of the loss. I'm Jo McRogers and I'm a grief specialist. Today I share my reflections on another year of delivering grief therapy. So please join our Grievolution community by subscribing to the channel and turning on the notifications bell so that you'll know every time we post around exploring all things grief. While each loss is unique, there are some principles that run ever present through the grief therapy that I deliver. The number one element, common, always, is fear. How do I do this? This is the most frequently asked question by my clients. Grief robs us of our infrastructure. What we thought we knew we could count on, we can no longer trust. It's a sense of control and then a loss of control. Grief robs us of our problem-solving abilities through interfering with our executive functioning. And what happens is that fear then dominates. It dominates in the fear of an unknown future and of losing a known past. The second element that always shows up is the experience of new filters. Elevated will be our bullshit filter. Our hypervigilance will be elevated in regards to illness or safety and control. We may eventually, if we do our grief work, have a higher sense or a truer knowing of what is important in life. Lowered will be our tolerance for small talk, for pleasantries, for other people's complaints, and for the patients with platitudes and misguided support. These changes often lead to changes in our relationships, changes in our careers, and changes in our relationship with ourselves. It's the beginning of the place of who am I now when I don't even recognize myself. So if you care to, please leave a comment below and let us know where some of your new filters showed up. It's important that we know that this is normal while we're grieving. I'll go first. When my mother died, I was shopping for funeral shoes. And yes, retail therapy is a real thing. But as I was shopping for funeral shoes, there was a major news event happening, and all of the TVs and the speakers in the local mall were covering this live event. And I remember having to actually resist the urge to shout at all of the people, "Don't you know my mother just died?" I had no tolerance for a white Ford Bronco highway chase. I dismissed all of these people as being idiots for being so interested in this event, and that is not my usual self. A new filter. The third element common to grief, where an experience of loss brings fear and then it brings new filters, naturally leads to a questioned identity. Who am I now with this loss in my life? Are you still a mother? Are you still a partner? Are you still a son or a daughter or a sibling or a grandchild or an auntie? How to identify yourself with this loss, both personally, privately, and publicly? How do you define yourself when you are unrecognizable to yourself? Your landmarks have disappeared, your self-resilience is stolen by grief, and your usual supports may not be available to you. It can be such a confusing time. Who are you now is one of the most important questions I ask of clients at some point during grief therapy. The fourth and final element common to grief is the result of fear, new filters, and a new identity, and this is isolation. No one else can know your specific grief. For your specific grief depends on the event of your loss. It depends on the process of your loss. It depends on your childhood blueprint with loss, your communication style, your tolerance for receiving help, or your ability to ask for help. Challenging and meeting your isolation is confusing. It is very hard work, and it is necessary work in order to integrate your grief into who you are now. My decades of offering support have taught me that a safe, supported community is integral to doing grief differently. So in 2021, I completed some coaching about using YouTube to reach more people in my role as a grief advocate and therapist. Thank you, Sunny Lenarduzzi. I launched this channel in June and I've posted 32 videos. Have a watch. They will save you some time and money in therapy. To date, I have over 500 subscribers and 12,500 views. So thank you to all who have joined in and supported. And while this is such a tiny little drop in the YouTube world, it feels like a very big win for grief. One of the clearest lessons that I have learned from launching this channel is that grief does crave community, a place to be held. I learned this especially when I began to see people commenting on other people's comments, supporting one another on this YouTube channel. And for that, I'm ever thankful. So in my role as a grief advocate, I will soon be launching another platform alongside YouTube for those who wish to be part of a safe, supported community of doing grief differently. It will be a commercial-free, distraction-free gathering place. Your grief is important enough that it deserves this type of intentional support from an informed professional perspective. It involves compassion as a beginning place. Together we will create our own algorithm of what matters. We no longer will need to play at the social media game of external scores or rankings or likes or shares and popularity contests. So I'm sorry, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and yes, even you, YouTube. I will continue to have a presence there, but there are too many hoops to jump through in order to get to the sincere work and offerings of doing our grief differently. So stay tuned, and if you wish to be notified when this launches, find a sign up link in my comment below. So in closing, know that if you are feeling totally upended by your grief in 2021, that there are legitimate reasons for this feeling. It is not about your inability to cope. It is about the nature of grief. Also know that you are not alone and that community awaits. So on this task of you meeting your grief, I wish you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Thank you, and I will see you next time.